a 9-year-old boy goes to the cinema and mysteriously disappears. This story appears on the pages of newspapers all over America. Dozens of suspects are investigated for 6 months, all in vain. Suddenly, the police find the boy on the other side of the country and return him home to Los Angeles. However, the boy's mother, Christine Collins, is convinced he is not her son. And at that moment, the story is just beginning.
This is one of America's most mysterious detective stories.
How the mysterious disappearance of the boy is connected to Hollywood, several maniacs, corrupt police, and feminism inequality.
This event happened almost a century ago in Los Angeles.
Beautiful LA, but Los Angeles has a dark side too, with criminal areas, homelessness, and a long history of mysterious crimes. On March 10, 1928, Walter wants to go to the movies and asks his mom for money. Christine could never have imagined that this would be their last meeting.
Movies were a big attraction at that time.
Los Angeles was becoming the world capital of cinema in the 1920s, just as the leading Hollywood studios were emerging. About a year before the events of the story, the first sound film was released.
It was just the beginning of cinema. Listening to sound from the screen instead of reading was a big event, but let's go back to March 10, 1928.
In the evening, his mother waits for her son for dinner, but he doesn't come, and any parent in such a situation starts to worry. But Christine worries doubly. Firstly, Walter was always a responsible child. His mother was a telephone operator and spent a lot of time at work. Secondly, shortly before this in Los Angeles, a maniac, William Hickman, was caught. He kidnapped and killed a child. At that time, the trial was underway, and every city dweller knew this story. Christine Collins was no exception. She checks with all acquaintances, but no one has seen the boy. Then she goes to the police to file a report. However, they cannot start the search until 24 hours have passed since the disappearance. The police officer reassures Christine, saying that in most cases, children just spend time with friends and return home on their own within a few hours. A day passes, and Walter is still missing. The police start the search. Testimonies from dozens of witnesses contradict each other. Some saw the boy with 2 suspicious individuals in a car.
Others noticed that a couple of strange Italians who were hanging around Walter's house the day before the abduction. As a result, the police searched the nearby areas, but no clues or body are found.
At that time, the police decide to learn more about the father of the missing boy. Christine was briefly married to an actor named Collins, from whom she retained the surname, and a young son, also called Walter Collins. At that time, the elder Walter was serving a sentence in prison for robbery. He mentions having enemies in the criminal world who could be involved in the disappearance of his son. The police investigate the information, but it turns out to be a false lead. Captain J.J. Jones, who plays an important role in this story, was responsible for Christine Collins' case.
The 1920s might have been the worst time in the history of the Los Angeles Police Department.
Prohibition was in full swing. Corruption scandals constantly shook the department, and many city residents were convinced that the police were only involved in bribery, political intrigue, and intimidating the population.
In short, anything but solving crimes.
Throughout this time, newspapers closely followed the progress of the investigation, and the police were under constant pressure from the public. Searches continued for almost 6 months with no results. Suddenly, the missing Walter Collins is found practically on the other side of the country, in a small town near Chicago. Police find the lost boy and ask, "Who are you?" The boy introduces himself as Walter Collins from Los Angeles.
The police verifies the information and indeed discovers that a boy with that name was reported missing.
The mother announces that her son has been found. She is ecstatic with joy, but she herself has to pay for the transportation of the boy halfway across the country back home. Upon Walter's arrival at the Los Angeles train station, it is crowded with journalists, photographers, and police, all ready to welcome the missing boy. For the press, this is a hot story, and for the police, it's a chance to improve their reputation in the eyes of the public. The train arrives. Journalists are ready. The boy steps out of the carriage. Camera flashes go off. Christine Collins approaches. Shock is evident on her face. The boy who has arrived is not her son. Christine tells Captain J.J. Jones, who is among the welcoming party, that this is not her child. Reporters witness this awkward and strange moment. To salvage the situation, Captain Jones assures the journalists that, of course, this is her son, suggesting that the mother is in shock after half a year of searching. Captain Jones persuades the woman not to cause a scene and to take the boy home.
It's important to understand that just 100 years ago, the country had only recently adopted an amendment to the constitution allowing women to vote, but otherwise, it was still very patriarchal. For a woman to refuse a man, especially representative of authorities, was extremely difficult.
Captain Johnson essentially coerces Christine Collins into taking the boy home to see if, as he puts it, perhaps the woman will recover from her shock and realize that he is indeed her son. Adding fuel to the fire is the boy himself. He continuously smiles, responds to the name Walter, calls Christine Mom, and tells the journalists that he's happy to finally be home. A photo is preserved from immediately after their meeting at the train station. A bewildered woman and a happy boy. In the end, Christine takes the boy home. We can compare photos of the real Walter Collins and the boy who arrived. They look somewhat similar, but a biological mother would notice the difference, even after a 6-month break. However, nobody cared about that. The journalists got their story. The police closed the case. Everyone was happy except Christine Collins.
Just imagine the level of insanity in the life of this poor woman. Everyone around her, the police, the reporters, are convinced that this is her child.
There's a boy running around the house who persistently calls you Mom.
But you're certain in that moment that he's not your son.
At this moment, Christine seeks some rational proof of her correctness to reassure herself that she's not losing her mind. In the evening, she gives the boy her son's pajamas to wear. They turn out to be too long. Christine realizes she's not crazy. The boy is definitely not her son. But most importantly, the real Walter Collins is still not found.
However, the police already declared the case successfully closed. Given the context, they would never admit that had made a mistake, so Christine had to take matters into her own hands.
Firstly, she needs to prove that the found boy is an imposter. Christine Collins takes the boy to a dentist who concludes that the structure of his teeth does not match the dental records of Walter Collins. Armed with this conclusion, Christine goes to Captain J.J. Jones. However, he is not willing to give in and admit the mistake. Instead, the policeman has the woman placed in a psychiatric institution. Christine Collins finds herself in the mental institution. At this moment, it seems like all hope is lost. She can't influence the case from inside the hospital, and nobody will let her leave. Christine realizes she might spend the rest of her life within these walls. Meanwhile, journalists, eager to get more details on the high-profile case, persist in their inquiries, wanting to know how the miraculously found boy ended up on the other side of the country and what he had been doing for those 6 months. However, the child couldn't give coherent answers to any of these questions. After being interrogated by the police for some time, he eventually admits that his real name is Arthur Hutchins. He's 12 years old, not 9 like Walter. Arthur had run away from his father and stepmother's home. At a cafe, he overheard a conversation discussing the story of the missing boy from Los Angeles. One of the men mentioned that Arthur resembled the missing boy, so Arthur saw it as his chance. He loved movies, especially westerns, and dreamed of going to Hollywood. So, he went to the police and introduced himself as Walter Collins. The court rules to award the victim $10,000, which in today's money would be over $100,000.
But Captain Jones never actually pays this amount.
Around the same time, the Los Angeles police receive a report from a girl claiming that something strange is happening on a farm near Los Angeles, where her uncle and younger brother live. She fears for the life of her 15-year-old brother. When the police arrive there, they find a 15-year-old boy named Sanford Clark. Upon questioning him, they uncover a horrifying truth. The teenager claims that his uncle is a serial killer.
Walter Collins wasn't the only missing child in this area of California over the past few years.
It turns out to be a 21-year-old man named Gordon and his mother Sarah. They are accused of kidnapping and murdering several boys. Reports suggest that the number of victims could be more than 20. All of these crimes took place on the farm. The case would go down in history as the Wineville murders.